Welcome everyone to the second night of the Club Marketing Series. My name is Anthony Alexander, and I am the District Director of District 31 Toastmasters here in Eastern Massachusetts and Rhode Island. And tonight's session is going to go over the audiovisual tools to enhance speaker experience. I'm excited to share this content with each and every one of you that are in attendance tonight, and also for those of you that are joining us through social media or YouTube, because we're going to go over a couple of tips and tricks, a lot of tools that are going to be leveraged through the virtual experience and the online experience to help bolster your club experience within Toastmasters overall. A lot of times, even prior to COVID and prior to Pathways experience, we always thought of audiovisual of just tapping our venue on the shoulder and just making sure that they had a mic on hand, making sure that they could hear you on the mic, but not necessarily knowing what they were doing with the mix board or anything else to make us audible. We typically thought of video in terms of making sure that we had a videographer or someone with a cell phone to record, but not necessarily thinking about the dimensions or anything like that. But this session is more geared towards, now that we're in this current state of the virtual world, what are the things that I need to consider as a speaker? What are the things I need to consider as a leader that's trying to facilitate a better speaker experience? And what are the other items I need to consider in terms of making sure that we have a more impactful audience and speaker experience in our Toastmasters world in 2020 and moving on into the future? We're going to go into 4 main components that are very important and critical in this virtual world in terms of audiovisual and the tools that you may need to have on hand to make sure you bolster your experience, and also may introduce you into different things that you may not even know that you have at your disposal that are surrounding you that you can use for your Toastmasters experience moving forward. So let's get started. The 4 important items to consider as a virtual speaker, and also when you're helping to coach a virtual speaker, are these things that you see in front of you. Good internet, because in the virtual world, you want to make sure that you stay connected throughout the entirety of your speech or presentation or what have you. You want a good microphone, because in a virtual world, and regardless of anything else as a speaker, you could probably forgive everything else as long as your audience can hear you. So we're going to go into the basics in terms of what to consider for a microphone, along with some supporting equipment for your microphone if you're using a different platform or a different tool. We're going to go into decent and better video. Not that you have to have the latest and greatest technology or tools for video, but you want to at least know what's out there and understand some of the basics in terms of setup for your video, regardless of what tool that you're using for your video. And then we're also going to talk a little bit about lighting, because based off of your setup and based off of the time of day, you may have to have certain considerations to help complement your image and complement your surroundings, so that way you don't have too much distraction as a speaker giving your presentation and giving your speech. So these are the 4 critical items that we're going to go over tonight, and things that you always need to consider when being a virtual speaker in this new age of presentations, and also this new age of being even the amateur or professional speaker. Now that we already introduced the concept, let's talk about internet for a minute. What type of internet do you need to make sure that you have a stable and consistent presentation and stay connected with your club and your fellow members? We need to think of it in terms of 4 different categories in terms of your basic internet needs in this new virtual world. Now, if you're using your internet for basic things such as browsing the internet to see what recipe is online, or just browsing your email and checking your email, you don't necessarily need that much bandwidth and that much connectivity for internet. So typically, in what you'll see in most service providers when you're looking at your packages, they'll define it based off of megabytes per second. When you're just using the internet for checking email and browsing the web, you typically only need 1 to 5 megabytes per second of upstream and downstream connectivity to make sure that you get your emails and you get your search engines within seconds without too much interruption in between. The next category has to do with streaming high definition content, so HD content. If you're streaming videos, if you're using Hulu, if you're using YouTube, and you just want to make sure that you have a stable connection so that way you don't have any interruptions while you're watching your favorite content, you need about 15 to 25 megabytes per second at a bare minimum if you're streaming that type of content. If it's standard definition, you're going to be on the low end of the spectrum. If it's true high def, like 1080p content, you're going to be on the higher end of that spectrum. But if you're only browsing the internet for email, if you're checking Google, and if you're streaming that type of content, you need the bare minimum of 15 to 25 megabytes per second. And we'll go into that in a little bit more detail when we summarize these points. Next up, if you have the latest and greatest 4K TV, or if you're like me and you play Xbox and PlayStation and you play competitively online against other individuals across the world, or this is also going into the important aspect, if you have a smart home that is always connected to the internet for your Alexa or Google devices, that's really streaming content on a regular basis and always connected to the internet, you're now embarking into the 40 to 100 megabytes per second minimum, because of the fact that you have multiple devices that are streaming very, very pointed data on a regular basis. And also you're streaming more refined and less pixelated video on behalf of all of the devices that you're using in your home. And on top of that, you're also going into this category if you have multiple individuals in your house that are using the Wi-Fi. So say you have a couple of children at home that are doing their virtual learning online. If they're also downloading content on their own, this is where you're going to want to be in the spectrum. And then the high spectrum of smart homes, everyone's on multiple devices streaming at the same time. If you're in a high download content work from home situation, if you have very large files that you're downloading on a regular basis, that's when you're getting into the 200 plus. There are very few individuals that are in this high need of megabytes per second. Most individuals fall into that third category that we just spoke of. But if you have multiple people that have multiple uses for all of these things, have multiple devices that are streaming on a regular basis, that's when you're going into that spectrum. Now that we went into all of those boring categories in terms of defining those items, what are your immediate needs for Toastmasters? As we spoke before, there is this category about streaming HD content. You want to think of your Zoom meetings, your Skype calls, your Microsoft Teams as streaming HD content. The reason why is just like this meeting right now, I have multiple individual screens that are probably uploading and downloading high quality definition content, which is you and your videos, and me and my videos going upstream as well, along with sharing a live stream HD content in terms of audio as well. So when you're thinking about your internet needs for a presenter in a Toastmasters world, when you're on Zoom with all of those videos pointing back at you in terms of internet needs, you want to think of it as streaming HD content because you have a bunch of micro TVs on your screen, and you're also upstreaming a lot of high definition quality content in terms of audio and visual as well. Now, if you also are connected with multiple devices that in your home, like Alexa and Google, and also have streaming in the background, like my wife and my son are watching YouTube right now and watching Elmo on repeat. This is the reason why I'm actually in that third category, is we have multiple smart devices that are going at the same time. And I also have multiple high definition quality content that is streaming on my computer right now. So that's why I'm in that third category. When you're thinking of your internet needs, you want to make sure that you're really looking towards that second and third category, depending on what your regular internet needs are from a regular basis. In most of your internet providers, if you're on a bundle package, typically give you a standard service of that second category, which is 25 megabytes per second. So if you have additional needs on top of that, whether you have a smart home, if you have multiple devices that are streaming content on a regular basis, if you have a son or a district director that's playing Xbox on your internet service on a regular basis, you want to look more towards that third category. But really understanding your internet needs from this concept is really going to help position you when you're presenting your speeches, getting your presentations for our PowerPoint, or even if you have videos as part of your presentation, you also want to consider that as well, because if you have a presentation that also has video included into it, that's pumping additional HD content through your presentation as well. So that's why you want to really understand where you fit in this model in terms of internet needs. So if you really have a basic home that's not a smart home, you want to be in that second category, because if your only need for HD content has to do with Zoom and meeting in a Toastmasters meeting on a regular basis, you're going to be in that second category. But if you have all of those additional internet needs on top of your regular Toastmasters meetings, you want to also look into that third category of internet speeds. So I hope that makes a little bit more sense in terms of basic internet and what requirements that you have on a regular basis and being a speaker in this new world, especially since you have multiple devices, multiple needs that are coming from all different angles. Now that we've covered internet, let's talk about the most important thing is being heard. So microphones. We're going to go through a couple of categories of microphones just to go over the basics. And we're also going to go through a real-time sound check of these three categories as well, based off of the equipment that I have at my disposal. First and foremost, we have the built-in computer microphones. This is kind of a bare minimum requirement. And for most purposes and most needs, your built-in computer microphone is really effective. So if you have just regular working meetings for your professional life, if you're facilitating a meeting as like a Toastmaster or one of the intricate meeting roles, your computer microphone is actually going to be really effective in those forums, because there's not really that much of a requirement other than just basically being heard, being addressed, and being able to facilitate ideas back and forth. While effective, most built-in computer microphones are built based off a very minimum standard. And I'm going to explain a little bit why. Most of your laptops and most of your PCs with built-in microphones are probably about 6 feet away from you. So my arm is about like 3 feet to my computer. I am still not touching my computer, and that's a far distance to be able to pick up my voice. So the way that computer microphones are built is kind of a fan effect outwards. So that way it's trying to pick up anything within the room in that radius to be able to pick up your voice and any sound that is going into the PC itself. While that is effective, unfortunately, it causes kind of an echo effect in terms of hearing your voice and getting your audio out into the meeting room. So for your meeting formats, it is effective because people can hear you, but as a speaker, that does have its drawbacks because of the fact that it causes that echo effect, because the computer is trying to compensate for picking up your voice and trying to pick up on the thing that is the loudest. So you may hear bouncing off of my voice as an echo into my PC if you're going to hear it through that way. I don't have it connected to my PC, and we'll test that in a minute. But that's kind of the drawback of having a computer microphone as a bare minimum as a speaker, because it's really picking up everything in the room as opposed to focus directly on your voice. The next level up, and this is more ideal for speakers and especially for speakers in competition, are earbuds, similar to the ones that I'm wearing right now, or a lapel mic. These types of built-in microphones in those formats are really more towards that omnidirectional effect around your head or around the speaking area of your mouth. Lapel mics are more preferred in this platform because the lapel mic is more focused of pointing towards your voice in a linear direction. So more often than not, if you're going to speak in a competition or if you're trying to be a presenter for a professional forum, you're going to want a wireless lapel mic because it's going to focus more linear upwards to point towards your voice. And it's really going to cancel or do sound cancellation of everything else in the background. That's why it's the most ideal type of equipment to have is a lapel mic. While earbuds are a nice second bet option, you still have the same issue as you would with a computer mic. Even though it's closer to my mouth and closer to my face, that omnidirectional pickup is really going to pick up anything that bounces sound around my head. So what we'll do in part of the sound check is not only will you hear my voice a lot clearer, but you're going to hear my voice bounce off the wall, and you're going to hear a lot of background noise around it because the mic is still trying to compensate for picking up my voice, which is here, while the microphone is back here. And that's why lapel mics are more preferential than earbuds. You may see a lot of speakers use the earbuds for Apple. You might see some speakers use, similar to what I'm doing, is the ear wraparound earbuds to help them compensate for just having something that's less distracting and a little bit more conservative. So you're not distracted by this big boy right here. But it's really one of those things where if you're a professional speaker or a competitive speaker, you want something that's discreet, but is more focused on your voice. And the other thing that makes the lapel mic a little bit more beneficial is there's no risk of that happening. So there's no distraction of dangling earbuds or anything falling out of my ears or potentially losing my mic that way. It's more secure by having it on your lapel. The last microphone that we're going to talk about are the external microphones. So similar to what you see right in front of me right now, this is an example of an external microphone, including this one that we're going to test in just a minute as well. The differences between these microphones are they're really fit for purpose for vlogging. They're really purposeful for podcasting. They're also a nice added feature if you were going to do it for meetings facilitation, because they're more robust. They're more fit for purpose for just focusing then on your audio closer to your mouth. And the other added benefit is there's a lot more power going into these microphones, so you're a lot more audible. And also on top of that, they're travel ready as well. This is one example of what's called a condenser microphone. So the purpose of this type of microphone is it's powered through an electrical means to really focus in on the audio waves that are coming out of my mouth and going straight into my PC. This is also another version of a condenser mic, but it's built specifically with all of the built-in power within the microphone itself. And on top of that, there's a USB port, so it goes directly into my computer. The differences between having a USB and this one is it's connected. This microphone is connected by an XLR cable that then goes into either a mixer or a converter to give the power to the mic that it needs to be able to give the clearer audio into my PC itself. Now that we went through these microphones, we're actually going to go through a quick sound check of all three of these different microphones so you can really hear the difference between the three. The microphone that you're hearing from me right now is this condenser mic here that's connected to what is called a mixer, which does the conversion of the electrical power needed to power the microphone that is connected to my PC. Now, this is a little bit more conservative because I did draw back the mixer a little bit to dull down the gain because I have a very powerful voice, a very baritone voice. So some of the things I'm able to modify so that way it's a little bit softer. So those of you that have me on 100%, you don't hear the megaphone voice that my voice is, while also still getting the clarity of my voice at the same time. So this is really me talking into this type of condenser microphone. The benefit to this is these types of condenser microphones you can get as little as $15. So they're very cheap, beneficial microphones. The drawback is by buying a microphone like this, you also need to buy either a converter or a mixer to help give it the phantom power it needs to power the microphone itself to be audible. So you'll wind up getting a $15 mic, but you may wind up spending $30 to $50 to help power the mic to do fit for purpose. We're going to switch to the next microphone, which I have, which is going to be these earbuds right here. And you're going to hear a noticeable difference in terms of the audio because it's going to be a lot louder and I can't necessarily control the audio features within here. So we're going to switch in 3, 2, 1.
Yo.
So you may hear an immediate difference in regards to the audio quality of this microphone. While you can hear me much louder through my headset, which is my earbuds, you can also hear a lot of an echo effect that's happening with this microphone in my earbuds. Because the same thing, it's an omnidirectional pull into the microphone that's in my ear because it's trying to compensate for my voice going outward like that. So you'll also hear not only me talking and receiving it through the microphone in my earbuds, but you'll also hear my voice bouncing off this wall and coming back. And that's what's causing that echo. If you have a very empty room and you have a lot of bouncing acoustics, that's a drawback to this type of microphone. And this is the thing that I was talking about a little bit earlier about having earbuds or these types of earbuds to compensate for a microphone, because it's really trying all of its strength to cancel as much noise in the background as it possibly can, while still trying to pull in my voice. So that is kind of the difference of using this versus kind of a lapel mic, which is going to be more focused on my voice. Unfortunately, I do not have the lapel mic to be able to do that test, but that's one of the things I wanted to make sure that we kind of conveyed on this test is having these earbuds has a very noticeable difference versus a lapel mic and a condenser mic. Now, the last sound check that we are going to do is my second USB condenser mic, which the drawback to this is these microphones go for probably around $60 up to $200. The reason why it's really a strong choice to get is it's built for purpose with the phantom power already built in. There's a lot of mixing options on the microphone itself. So this microphone by Blue Yeti has options for me to modify the gain directly within the microphone itself. It also has features built into the microphone where I can adjust based off of the format of speaking. So if I have an interview with me and one other person going into the mic, I can switch the feature of the microphone itself to only focus voices coming in front of it and then back of it. If I have a conference where I have, say, 4 people surrounding this mic, I can switch the features to be omnidirectional, full around the mic. So regardless if someone's sitting to the left, the right, or in front of me, the microphone is going to pick from all directions. I can also switch this microphone to only be focused directly in front of it as well. And we're actually going to switch to the audio of this microphone as well, because you'll hear a noticeable difference in regards to this mic as well. So we're going to switch to the last condenser mic in 3, 2, 1. So now you'll hear me a lot clearer, a lot louder, and there's a little bit more pickup from other aspects from the room, but it's really built to focus more on my voice because of the fact that I have the modifications here. And on top of that, I can also adjust the gain so it can be a little bit quieter. As you can see, it's going a little bit quieter now. I can also pick up the gain so it can pick up a lot more of my voice and a lot more of what's going on in the room, just in case I wanted to pick that up. But that's kind of the benefit of having a condenser mic versus all of the other options. If you are going to do a podcast, if you're going to do a video vlog, or even for your meetings, is this provides a much clearer sound than what a regular PC would do on its own. And that's our quick sound check test for this presentation. And we can go a lot more into microphones at a later point. And I think that's one of the spinoffs that I want to do at a later point. But those are the basics in terms of microphones and what you can hear in terms of a difference in terms of audio quality. Next is video. There's a lot of different options out there for your video. And we're going to go over just quickly a lot of the different categories, the benefits, the drawbacks, and some of the things in between. But in terms of video, we're only going to go through 2 examples for our live test, and we'll get into the reason why we're only going to go through those two options based off of what we're going through in this presentation. The first option is the built-in computer camera. So this is also a bare minimum because of the fact that it's kind of an industry standard. When you're in a business meeting or if you're in your professional life, no one's really expecting you to go out and get an external camera so that way you can be aesthetically pleasing to go over business documents and go through your day-to-day presentations. So your built-in computer camera for, again, your standard meeting, facilitating a meeting, doing basic PowerPoint presentations and not necessarily anything that you need professional grade quality for, that's what you're going to use your built-in computer camera for, and that's effective and that's good. The drawbacks to that in terms of when we're thinking about Toastmasters, when we're thinking about professional speaking, when we're thinking about competitive speaking and everything in between, is that it's very restrictive. So when you want to stand up and do a presentation, if you have a lot of hand gestures or anything in between, it's really hard to kind of make the camera follow you and pick it up and do all of the things in regards to your camera. So from a presenter standpoint that wants to be a more dynamic presenter or a more dynamic professional speaker or competitive speaker or everything in between, your built-in computer camera is not going to do the job. And on top of that, if you want to really bolster up the background in your surroundings or even the aesthetic look of your face and everything else, your built-in computer camera is not going to do enough of the modifications for it to be flattering. Now, if you invest in Alienware or something that more robust in terms of an Apple computer, you may get that out of your built-in computer camera, but most of your built-in computer cameras in your laptop, even if they were made within the last 3 years, are really not going to give you the quality that you're looking for as a presenter. That's what leads into the rest of the cameras that we're going to go into. So your external webcam. This is the next upgrade to a computer camera. While this allows you more flexibility in terms of placement, so a lot of external webcams come with attachments where you can do suction against a wall or put it on top of a PC to get it a little bit higher or attach it to different ways. It gives you more of that flexibility, but you also have that drawback in terms of good quality and flexibility to adjust the definitions to bolster the quality of the video overall. You're going to have to spend a lot of dollars for a lot of those built-in features or even the software and hardware required to have that modification directly in your computer to make it emulate the same as if it were an external camera. So external webcams are a good upgrade for your PC if you wanted to be a more dynamic speaker, but it's really not fit for purpose for a lot of your professional grade presentations, your competitive grade presentations, or even if you wanted to make it a more personable experience in terms of video quality. The next of your standard videos is probably the best option out there, which is a DSLR cable. So camera, which is a camera that you typically see that takes still pictures. So your photographer-based camera that has Wi-Fi configuration built into it. That's why most DSLR cable cameras are built in with Wi-Fi that can connect to your PC, that can serve as an alternative to your webcam and a supplement to your webcam. Also, camcorders with that same Wi-Fi feature will also be able to have the functionality to replace your webcam as well. The best thing about it is you have full flexibility and range of motion for your cameras and placement. You have most of these DSLR cameras nowadays based off of social media influencers and a lot of people that are more going into vlogging and video podcasting, so recording their podcast and then putting it on video and things like that. A lot of these cameras, there's a lot of options out there where they're moderately priced for very great quality and modification and flexibility for definitions. The only drawback to this alternative is the accessories that you need to have to supplement these things can add up quickly. So your memory cards, your camera stands, if you wanted to have a camera attachment on top of that camera instead of having this set up for your condenser mics or any computer mics, can cost a pretty penny. So that's why DSLR cameras and camcorders are also the best option to have for video quality, but the accessories can add up on you very quickly. So those are kind of your standard features for video quality and what is out there in the marketplace. But there's also two more options that may actually benefit you a little bit more if you're not willing to throw up the dollars towards an external camera. And those are your smart devices. tablets are a good replacement for a webcam, and I see a lot of individuals actually using their tablets exclusively as opposed to their laptops. However, a tablet is pretty much a smaller version of a laptop. So all of the drawbacks that we mentioned about a laptop, such as the flexibility of placement, is a little bit more restrictive, even though there's more accessories out there that allow you to put it on a stand and at least have more range of motion for it. But also the same drawback as a laptop does have currently is you have the limited ability to adjust for good quality and definitions. Now, more of the next gen tablets have accommodated for that slightly in terms of their cameras having a little bit more built-in features for zooming and also white lighting and a lot of those other items. They have incorporated those tools in some of those next gen tablets, but for the most part, they have a lot of the same drawbacks in terms of flexibility of good quality and definitions as a laptop would. Now going into the last device, and this is the reason why I'm only going to go through 2 devices, is your smartphone. Anyone who has a smartphone, at least from the iPhone 8 Gen or higher, a Galaxy Samsung 8 Gen or higher, a Google Pixel, most of your LG phones, a lot of the smartphones that have been created within the last 5 years actually have the same video quality as a DSLR camera or a camcorder built into it. The test that we're going to do in just a moment is on a Galaxy S20 Ultra, and that camera actually has all the way up to 100 times zoom, which I don't know why I would need to zoom into my face 100 times. Maybe I need to check out my pores a little bit closer, but it has the same quality and picture as any top grade camera. So I do encourage folks that already have a smartphone to look at some of the apps that are out there. One of the apps that I'm actually going to use as part of this test is called DroidCam, which uses the IP address within my smartphone to convert the video directly into my PC. And that's the test that we're going to do in just a moment, just so you can see a clear difference in terms of video quality versus my built-in webcam versus what my smartphone can do in terms of video quality for as a presenter. And the best thing about a smartphone is there's full flexibility of placement. There's lots of accessories that are very, very cheap, like the one that I'm using right now, to hold my smartphone in place so that way I can have a stationary camera in front of me to do live streaming and stuff like that. There's full flexibility in terms of adjustments of definition. So the settings of your video camera within your smartphone have all of the same settings as most of the camcorders and cameras that are out there in the marketplace today. The reason why smartphones are so expensive nowadays is because not only are they supercomputers, but they're super camcorders as well. And again, like I just mentioned, the greatest benefit to this is all of the accessories that can be obtained to hold up or light a smartphone are very, very cheap. And we'll go into some of the lighting accessories that I have to supplement my smartphone in just at the end part of the session. But we're also going to do a live test right now in terms of video quality. So right now I am using the built-in camera within my laptop. While it is an HD grade camera, and it does have some basic qualities in terms of white balancing, in terms of color, and being able to kind of adjust some of the aesthetics of my face and the background of my room, you may notice that there's a lot of pixelation in terms of the video that's being presented on this camera. And that's because of the fact that it's not as high definition of a camera as it's actually promoted to be. Even though it does say that it is an HD camera, it's still not pumping out HD quality framing. And because of that, you're seeing a lot of like squares that are happening around my face. You're seeing a lot of squares that are happening around my shirt and also around the room because it's not pumping out that immense quality and video quality that we want it to do. Now, what we're going to do in just a second is, like I mentioned, I am using a Samsung S20 Ultra, which is a Droid device. So I am using an app called DroidCam that is free and downloadable on on Google Play right now. And this allows me to use the IP address from my phone to convert it into the webcam that I'm using on my screen. And we are going to change the video in 3, 2, 1, and switch. Now you're going to see an immediate difference in terms of the quality of the picture, because now instead of all of that pixelation on my face, you can now see flat framing. You can see aesthetics in terms of my skin. You might see a little bit of the shine off of my head a lot clearer. But that's the difference between using your smartphone and using your built-in webcam, is it's a much clearer picture. You also may see a little bit more definition in the microphone as well, because you can see a lot of the shine, you can see a lot of the light bouncing off of everything. It's just a much better video quality. And I would say if you do have a smartphone that's one of the most recent generations within the last 4 to 5 years, this is a good replacement for your webcam. And it also can save you hundreds of dollars of investing into a camcorder or a DSLR camera, because of the fact that all of the same video quality is there. All of the HD quality is there. And on top of that, if you wanted to stream much higher definition, there's features within your smartphone to change it from standard definition to 1080p to 1920p. So you can also play around with the features on your camera on the updated smartphones to make it so it's even better quality. You can also do a lot in terms of coloring, light balancing, and all of the things in between with your smartphone, similar to what a camcorder can do. So if you're on a budget, but you have a smartphone that has those features, I highly recommend downloading an app that can convert your cell phone's camera into the camera on your PC, because you can get dividends of benefit as a professional grade speaker, a competitive speaker, and everything in between by having this upgraded quality from here. The last topic we're going to talk about is lighting. Now, lighting is important because in terms of things that can be distracting in the background, you don't want your shadow to be one of those things to be distracting from your speaker. I'm looking at you, Kevin, right now, because the way that you have your lamp angled, that's exactly what I'm talking about right now. Is if you were giving a presentation, I can see a lot of different shadowing that's happening in the background that may slightly distract me from you doing your presentation. A lot of what I'm doing right now is in terms of having just a couple of lamps set up around me. So that way some of the shading that's happening in the background is minimized because of the angle of my lighting and also the color of the lighting that I'm using. The other benefit to having a better definition grade camera when you're using that is a better grade camera is also going to balance the light in your background as well. Your basic webcam within your computer is only going to give a full definition of what's in your surroundings, but it's not going to balance the light that's picking up in the camera to be able to dynamically shade some of the shadowing that could be happening in the background. But we'll talk about a few of those items in a little bit. But the first thing we want to speak to is for lighting, one of the things that you want to be cognizant of is the light glares like we just mentioned. Your speaking area should be away. If you're giving a speech in the daytime, you should be away from windows or at least have your shades down so it doesn't pick up the camera and the glares that are happening in the background. One of the things that my clients like to make fun of me all the time when I'm doing Zoom meetings and Zoom calls with them is there's a halo that's above my head. And the reason why there's a halo above my head is because out of the window, it's bouncing light off of my microphone here. And the light that's bouncing off the microphone here is causing a circle that's happening on my ceiling, which makes it seem like I have a halo above my head. So those are the things where light glare, shadowing, and those things you want to be cognizant of in the way that light is bouncing off of your rooms and how you're angling your lighting devices to make sure that that's not being caused in the background to be unintended distractions. Next is to ensure consistent color of lighting. What I mean by that is you may not think about this on a regular basis, but each of your light bulbs in your room may be inconsistent colors. So there's a difference between having warm lighting, cool white lighting and also warm white lighting in terms of the colors of lights that are in your background. A prime example, right now in the background, I have cool white lighting in the background, which is doing a pure white color of lighting in my background. So that way it brightens up the background for me. But what you also can see out of my kitchen on my stage left is my kitchen actually has warm lighting. So that causes that yellowing effect that you're seeing in the background. If you have two different colors that are happening in the background, that also can cause an unintended distraction because someone may be focusing in on me and giving a gesture or doing a movement or something like that. And if I angle myself to the area that has a different color in the background, that may deter my audience to focus on something else other than me. So that's why you want to have balanced lighting throughout the room. Now, I'm actually kind of glad that my wife did that because that's a good example of what you don't want to happen. If possible, you want to white balance your camera to neutralize color tone. What that means is for most cameras, they have a feature that calls for if you want to white balance, and that neutralizes the camera to focus its colors accordingly. So there is that feature. Once when you get to that, is what you'll do as an example is it'll give you a demo screen. It'll ask for you to put something that you want as a white balance for the colors that it wants to pick up. You typically want to get like a white envelope or a white sheet of paper to put in front of the camera to white balance it. After it does that exercise, it's kind of the same thing as if you were to kind of align your printer, so to speak. So what it does is it identifies the purest white color that is going to be in front of the camera. So if it finds other colors, it automatically neutralizes the whole entire room to balance the colors to make sure it's in an even tone. So if at all possible, and if your camera has that feature, you want to make sure that you have white balance on your camera. Next, you also want to choose a light color that complements the surrounding tones of your room. So as I mentioned, I have my kitchen light right now that's actually a warm tone. So for me to be able to do that, I actually have some lighting equipment in my room, which a lot of these, like this lighting arrangement that I have right here, that's only like $7 on Amazon. I can do this as a background to then change the color to neutralize the tone of my room. And I have one more that's actually in front of my audio camera. So that way I can even out that color to neutralize those tones. Now you don't see as much yellowing coming from my kitchen because I've now neutralized the color around me to make it even across the board. So that's what you want to kind of do in terms of your surroundings is depending on if your room has a white wall or a brown wall or what have you, you can use the different colors of the lights around you to neutralize the tones and even out your surroundings so it's less of a distraction. Last thing we're going to talk about is just lighting in terms of presentation format, because based off of the different platforms and avenues you may be using, lighting may or may not be very important. As we mentioned before, in my working environment, we do a lot of PowerPoint and screen shares. Lighting is not as important in those formats because most of the focus is going to be on the presentation that's on the screen and not necessarily as me on the speaker. So when you're thinking about lighting in terms of presentations, if you're doing a PowerPoint or a screen share or something that's more on the content itself rather than you as a speaker, lighting is kind of a moot point. So you don't necessarily need to worry so much about lighting there. One-on-one discussions and meetings that don't include kind of content-based conversations, natural light is fine. If it's there in the daytime, you can have a window that's cracked open. You can have a couple of room lights that kind of illuminate and also put a little bit more color into the frame. But you don't necessarily need to worry about balancing of colors or all of that other stuff because natural light is going to be good for one-on-one discussions and meetings because it's more interpersonal communication rather than professional grade speaking. Now for keynote presentations, you want to really balance your lighting based off of white lighting as much as possible because that's going to help even out the tones of your room the best way possible. And on top of that, it's not going to distract from you as a presenter. And say if you're wearing something that's really bold, like say you're wearing a red, you're wearing a yellow, you're wearing an orange to really gravitate attention to you as a speaker. Or even if you're wearing just a flat black tone, white lighting is going to make those colors pop and draw more attention to you as a speaker. So white lighting is usually the best if you're giving a keynote presentation or if you're speaking competitively in one of our speech contests. For vlogging, you want a little bit more neutralized tone. So some of that may be the cool white lighting or the warm lighting that I'm using right now, because for vlogging, you really want that warm setting, that interpersonal setting that really kind of broadens up your tones. And even this time of year, us being New Englanders and loving the fall so much, those darker, warmer tones are really what's going to make your video pop and seem more engaging. Now for video podcasts and YouTube, again, it's really using your best judgment, because quite honestly, depending on your format of your podcast or your vlog at that point in time, and you have multiple speakers that may be coming in different tones, you may want to pop out as kind of the more balanced tone based off of what content you're speaking about. You may want to be on that cool, relaxed tone, but you want to use your best judgment in terms of what's going to complement you on the speaker and the content that you're sharing as part of your podcast or your YouTube channel. But really, it's kind of picking the right light for the right form that's really drawing onto the speaker experience. With all of that being said, having the right tools as a speaker will help enhance your speech. And only when you use them properly is what's going to complement you as a speaker when you're in this virtual format. Again, having the right lighting is really going to make your video pop a little bit more and make it a little bit more engaging. Having good video quality is what's going to make you seem a little bit more engaging as a speaker, as a vlogger, or even just make it a little bit more interpersonal, because with better video quality, it makes it seem like I'm actually in the room with you, because it's a clearer picture and it's like you're face to face with me in a more engaging fashion. And more importantly, we can forgive bad video quality. We can forgive bad lighting as long as we can hear you. So making sure that you have a consistent and stable internet and making sure that you have a mic that really picks up your voice in the right way is what's really going to make you an engaging speaker in this format, regardless of if it's a one-on-one engagement or if you're giving a keynote speech virtually to 200 audience members. It's really about being heard, being more aesthetic, and making your video pop. And with that being said, that concludes the main portion of this web series. But we're now going to open it up to Q&A just in case you have more pointed questions in regards to internet, microphone, video quality, and lighting. Now, I'm actually going to start with some of the questions that did pop up in the chat first. And then once when I get through the last question, which I'll let you guys know once when I get to it, we can then open it up to more open dialogue. So going through a couple of these questions. First one is from Kevin Murphy. I actually bought a Blue Yeti mic, but had difficulty connecting it to my computer. Any suggestions? Followed the directions best as possible, but not easy. Now, Blue Yetis typically have software included once when you receive the mic. So you'll typically either get a USB port or you'll get at least a CD that comes with it that has kind of the software to include, so it can be recognized by your PC immediately. And that way it can connect as a main microphone. If you don't have those items immediately available, Blue Yeti actually can allow you to log on to their website, register your mic once when you've unboxed it, register the code, and they'll also allow you to download the same software features based off of if you're using a Mac or a PC to do the exact same thing. If those two things are not viable, my best suggestion is some of the directions actually have a little bit more specifications where you can go into the settings in the mic, so that way you can work with the features of the microphone itself through your PC to upgrade it. I can do another session directly on that because I had to do the exact same steps when setting up my mixing board here, because the mixing board has unique steps that you need to follow for everything to be picked up. But those are the three recommendations that I have. One, if using the software that comes with the microphone. If you don't have that, logging onto the website specifically for, I would say, Blue Yeti. Rode microphone has the same thing, and Florian microphones have the same thing. So the Florian mics that you see me using, they have the same website domain where you can download the software. But those two are your best bets first, but there'll also be more advanced features to be able to kind of connect your microphone if those are not an option. Next question, is it possible to adjust camera angle to eliminate the ceiling view? A small angle adjustment can fix this, plus reduce the halo effect. Now, I've tried that before, and really it depends on where the light is hitting within your room. The halo effect is actually only happening because I always have this mic in my room, and then I have a window that's right directly in front of me. At a certain time of the day, it hits the mic, goes into my ceiling, and whenever I get made fun of, I just have to adjust my lines. But usually you just have to adjust the angle where the light is coming from. And then last but not least in questions before we open it up to the masses is, what about using a green screen? Green screen is really a good feature if it's used purposefully. There's a reason why I didn't cover that in this session. And one of the reasons why is some people use green screens for just enhancing their virtual backgrounds. So that way it's a little bit more capsulating. And also, if you don't have a green screen, what tends to happen if you have a virtual background is pixelation happens around your surrounding body. So the green screen is there for you to help really embed you in the background that you're trying to use and leverage of your virtual background. So green screens are used for that. I've also seen green screens used as backgrounds to present a PowerPoint presentation in the background of a speaker. That's more of an advanced application of green screening, where folks can use their PowerPoint presentation and really kind of make it, and I hate to use this equivalent, but it's more natural to me because I have a very young child, but it gives you that Blue's Clues effect, where the green screen is really the presentation of everything that you want around you, where you can point to different things and really be more animated with your surrounding presentation and make it more engaging. That's more advanced green screening, which that's one of the reasons why we didn't cover it in this session, because there's a lot of different applications to using a green screen. Now that we're done with the chat questions, I do encourage the audience, unmute yourself and feel free to ask me any questions that you may have at this point in time. And try to keep it at one at a time. And one of the things I do ask is just announce your name and also the club that you're representing, because since we're sharing this on YouTube and sharing it on, and potentially sharing this on podcasts, it's good to say your name and also the club that you represent. Not everybody at once. And actually, to make this a little bit better, I will go ahead and end my screen share so I can see everyone.
Anthony.
Hi, Roberta.
Hi, Roberta Miller from Chelmsford Toastmasters. And I have a question for us glasses wearers. Mm-hmm. Do you have any tips for adjusting a laptop so that there is not glare off the eyeglasses like you see right now?
That's a very, very fair point. I think there's a couple of things that I have done to kind of minimize that. One of them is the screen blackout feature. So if I am a part of a meeting and I'm not speaking towards a particular slide, or if someone's managing the slides for me, this is one of the benefits of having multiple screens. So one way I'll do a blank PowerPoint presentation where I black out the screen and put it directly in front of me while the meeting is happening on a different screen, so I can focus directly in my camera. And then there's no glare from the presenters and all the light that's coming off of my PC. That's one immediate tip that I have right out the gate. It really depends on how you have your screens angled to kind of minimize that. A lot of times it's mainly about minimizing the resolution or doing a blackout is what I typically do in terms of making sure that I don't see myself back on the screen or see that immediate glare. And so people can see my eyes.
Thank you.
But good question. That's a great question.
I have one.
Mm-hmm.
Laura Mochinimi from the Marathon Toastmasters Club. Somebody alluded to this before, but where is the best way you want to have eye contact? You look, I have a tablet, you look into the dot, but then you can't see the screen of people that you're talking to. So what is your best recommendation for taking care of that issue? I know double screen would be best, but if you only have the iPad.
Nope, I completely agree with you. And that is an excellent question as well. One that has a very complex answer, because at the end of the day, in a virtual environment, your audience is that black dot. And you may have noticed that I was actually going back and forth, and that's actually a feedback that I have for myself, and something that I'm also constantly working on is, as Toastmasters, we're trained to give eye contact to people. In a virtual environment, your people is the camera. So a couple of tricks that I've overheard from other speakers at my firm and other speakers externally is they put either a picture of their loved ones around the camera, so that way they're focusing in on the camera. There's actually one person that has cartoon pictures that they put on top of it, so that way they know to engage with the camera. A lot of the updated cameras or webcams have that feature where they have the red dot, so you can focus on the red dot and focus in on the camera, but it's really trying to trick yourself out of the mindset of focusing in on the camera rather than the people that are in the boxes on below. It takes a lot of practice, I know, but your audience is truly the camera, not the people. And that's why I tricked myself by going back and forth between my cell phone and also the webcam, because it's good practice for me to focus in on that camera rather than the camera that's on my PC as well. Great question. One question that I do receive a lot, and it has to do with microphone setup, because I've received this from a few other Toastmasters globally, is in terms of what's best, getting a USB mic versus a condenser mic that needs phantom power. I think it's really dependent on what you're using your microphone for on a regular basis. Both have immediate benefits, both have immediate drawbacks. I will say this Blue Yeti microphone I've had since 2016, since I was public relations manager for District 31. It's lasted for 4 years, best $80 investment that's ever been made. It's really suited for purpose, and a lot of flexibility and functionality with it. Is very travel sensitive. It is a little bit on the heavy side with the stand and everything else, but it's really suited me well for really the one-on-one engagement. However, if you're leaning more towards trying to do interviews and do podcasting and being a little bit more flexible for more than just yourself, that's where getting the XLR and mixer setup benefits you, because it's really going to be kind of a good, best long-term solution to podcasting, long-term vlogging, long-term flexibility in terms of equalizing your voice, doing different effects, and all of those things in between. I think as you're starting out, it's really good to kind of do a lower investment, even though the audio quality is a little bit lesser than for this mic setup that I have. For getting the microphone, the shock mount that you see here that keeps it in place, this XLR cable that came with it, the stand that you see it on, this whole setup cost me $30. And then being able to get the converter to build the phantom power to connect it to your PC at a bare minimum costs, for a good quality one, about $30 on top of it. So you're looking at a $60 investment to really get you started in terms of podcasting, getting a little bit more audio quality for your PC and all of that. So even though a lot of times I get the question of USB mic, condenser mic versus XLR setup, both of them have their benefits. To really get started out, it's a really good investment for the 2 to 3 year plan. And really, I get a lot of benefits out of both. And then the one frequently common question that I usually get is, I do have a smartphone, but how do I really set up my smartphone with the right features to set up my camera? To kind of answer this question, I'm going to switch back to my webcam so I can take this down. So we just switched over here. I'm going to try to keep this as close to the screen as possible so you guys can see it. So I'm going to go into my camera app. In my camera app in my Samsung, I'm going to go to the gears on the very top. This is where you get all of the features of screen optimization on your basic Android phone. And the iPhone has kind of the same functionality, but this is where your home base is going to be for audio quality. The first thing we're going to go to in terms of audio quality for the videos for purpose of your webcam is the front video size. So as you guys can see out of the features and options, I'm going to scroll a little bit down to the very first video and go to my front video options. You can also do the rear video camera. I was using the rear video camera at first. You can also use your front camera, so your selfie camera, to do the same thing, and it gives you the same quality. But that's where you can immediately see my settings that you can see for full optimization for HD. So you can see that I already have the 1080p and the 30 frames per second and 60 frames per second for each of the video quality. So that's giving me that clear HD video quality out of my cameras. But this is also where you're going to look at the different resolution options that are available in that camera. Just in case you wanted a wider frame for your camera, you can go to the 16:9 and look at the different HD definitions that are there. So you can see that there's lots of different options to make your camera pop from a video standpoint. You can also do a full screen option, which automatically defaults to certain settings there. I typically stay away from the 1-for-1 setting because that's not as dynamic of a video quality when you're connecting to your PC. But I tend to go towards more of the 16:9, so that way it gives me the wide angle camera and gives me more of my room definition in there. And then I try to stay on the mid to lower definitions in terms of video quality, because depending on my audience, I can't necessarily rely on my full audience to really all have HD video resolution on their PCs or whatever devices that they're using. So I typically go with the 1920 1080 all the way down to the 1280 to 720. That's still going to give you clear video quality, and it's still going to give you high definition quality, but it's more generic for all audiences in between. And then the other item that I did mention a little bit earlier is in terms of HD efficiency. So there are these within your basic cell phone, there's advanced recording options. So there's this in between here, where you can also further adjust the dynamic settings for your HDR quality for your camera as well. And if you're exclusively using your cell phone as your built-in mic, which is one thing that we didn't cover as part of this session. So say you didn't want to use your laptop microphone, but you wanted to use your cell phone's microphone, you can use the video options from your cell phone to pick that up. And even your cell phone has better mic qualities than some of the built-in laptops and PCs. And even some of the lapel mic and even my earbuds it matches up to that same audio quality from a microphone standpoint there as well. So those are a few different options that you have from just the basic settings from your cell phone to give you that clear visual experience, and even a better audio experience in between when you're using it for your web experience and your speaker experience through a virtual platform. With that being said, I do want to thank everyone for attending this session. For more information on these items, I do encourage people to visit the attachment that's going to be shared immediately after this video. It's going to cover all of the equipment that I used for this session, along with Amazon links to take you exactly to those items and where to shop for them. It's going to give you those price points. It's going to take you directly to Amazon. So just in case you wanted to get this mic, just in case you wanted to see the mixer that I'm currently using, just so you get an appreciation of the price point of some of these things, it's actually going to be a full list of everything that I'm using tonight and also the price points of where they're at. Also, on top of that, if you do have any additional questions about this session or even more questions for the equipment that I'm using, feel free to reach out to me, Anthony@district31.org. That'll go directly to my email. And any questions that you have regarding the session, AV needs, or District 31 as a whole, feel free to reach out to me at any time. It was a pleasure going through this session with you. Please feel free to register for the remaining sessions for the club marketing series that we have this week. We have some good ones going over Toastmasters branding, how to build a newsletter, which are both tomorrow night. And then we also have a deep dive session on how to use Meetup for your clubs, which was a high demand ask that came out of our most recent Toastmasters Leadership Institute, so our TLIs, where you'll get a deep dive session on how to apply the tactics that were discussed during our TLI for Meetup for your clubs during that hour and a half. So the rest of this week has very valuable content that is a not miss session for these next 2 days. And even if you do miss it, every single one of these sessions are going to be recorded and uploaded on our district YouTube channels and our social media streams, so you can revisit this content at any time. So thank you for your participation. Thank you for your attendance. And I hope everyone has a great rest of your night. Cheers.